Welcome to Watch World with Faye, a new podcast in the watch and lifestyle space. I'm your host, Faye Sateri. I've been in the industry for over 20 years and I've been lucky enough to work with the people behind the brands, from some incredible independents and micro brands to the Goliaths. One thing that I've noticed as a common theme is every brand has its own unique story. Join me in meeting with these people as we bring these stories to life. Hello, I am Faye from Watch World with Faye, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Georgia Benjamin, watch collector and content creator. Firstly, I'd love to thank you, Georgia, for being my first guest in the micro series of Women in Watches. It was really important for me to look and delve into this area because I do feel it's underutilized and underrepresented in our little watch world. So firstly, thank you so much for joining me and being my guest today. I've been a big fan for a long time. I'm going to launch into what you do and how you got there and why you love watches and particularly vintage. But first things first, I want a wrist review. What are you wearing?
Today, I am wearing an 18038 gem set tantalum dial, and I am obsessed with this piece. I got it as maybe 4 years ago, and it's my gateway into this collecting world. It's a very happy piece that makes any outfit very elevated.
And what a gateway piece. Goodness me.
I know.
So why don't you start by telling us your story and how you fell in love with watches, vintage especially, because I think it shapes your personal story of and how you have like launched into the watch world. Specifically for you, it is vintage. I know you work with a lot of contemporary and modern pieces, but I think vintage is where your passion lies, right?
Yes, I think exactly right. And for so many reasons, but how I got into it was my 30th a few years ago, and I wanted to treat myself to I had the title of gold Rolex. I had no idea really what I wanted, and I wasn't really a watch person. I was a jewelry person, but I wasn't a watch person before that. So I started learning and diving into Reddit forums and reading books and sort of trying to discover as much I could about what gold Rolexes are. Like, what is the history of them? What do they look like? What do they look like around the year I was born? Like, do I want something that's going to commemorate this 30th birthday of mine? And I found the President Day date. In my head, this was such an iconic and beautifully designed piece that has just stood the test of time in terms of sort of design and aesthetic. And so I sort of honed in on this model. And then it took me a full year and a half of learning and of trying on pieces and of really discovering till I found this one. And that opened this whole world to me because I really fell in love with the romance of vintage. And for me, it's this unwritten story that you don't ever know. Like, this lived its entire life for 30 years before it came into my life. And I have no idea what happened to it. It's got an amazing tropical finish. Where was it lying so that the sun had this impact? Like, what happened to this before it came into my life? And now it's my turn to write this next chapter. So I think that's how I fell in love with vintage, especially.
I love that. Firstly, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to do this, for me, a watch doesn't just tell the time, it tells a story, and that's really important. But what a custodian for that watch for you to be its next owner. And wouldn't it be lovely to find out all of those little whispers that we could hear of what it's seen, done, heard along the way. But you've got a design background, and as a designer yourself, what aspects of vintage watch design particularly capture your attention and inform your own creative decisions, I suppose?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So my main job, my actual job, is I work as a design leader at Adobe. So I focus on sort of UI UX and really looking at that user experience throughout products. And I think I kind of take that same approach to looking at watches too. Like, what does the watch designer think about the user or the wearer reading the time or reading the certain complications, and how does that whole piece come together? So I kind of look at it as a sort of a holistic experience when looking at a watch. It's not just a pretty bauble that sits in your arm that's made of gold or whatever it might be. There's such a story that goes into the actual design element of it. And I think especially vintage, why I find it so romantic, and I'm learning a lot more about modern too, which I'm also finding fascinating. But vintage, it's very evocative of a specific time when it was designed. So the fact that this was designed 50 something years ago, more than that actually at this point, what was going on politically at the time? What was going on with art influences and design influences? And how does that manifest into a specific watch style? Not just this, but like you look at 70s Piaget, they're so iconic, they're so 70s. And it's sort of very evocative of the architecture style, the art style in general, and that manifested into watch design. So I think really sort of honing in fact, external factors and how that sort of came into these little things that we wear on our wrist is something that I love sort of looking at that correlation and the relationship between.
It's really interesting you should reference Piaget, actually. I was at an event this week. A friend of mine is an artist, and he was showcasing a capsule collection at the Warhol Kennedy residence in central London. And it's pretty much a whole space dedicated to the artist and the photographer around it. And we were talking about the Piaget piece that came out, which we would have seen in Switzerland earlier this year, the Warhol. So I'm hoping to want to reach out to Piaget and see if they'll do a collaboration within the space and talk about the watch, because as you said, those influences from decades ago are where brands are reaching back to their archives or looking at elements that really speak to them and their brands and their DNA, and they're launching with pieces now. So there is such a crossover with contemporary pieces and vintage. They're not in isolation. So it's not a watch that's several years old, or to identify it is a vintage piece. There's a vintage theme. It's not just the pieces that are of a certain age. By the way, I love the fact that when you were thinking about what watch you wanted, you went with gold Rolex. Other brands and metal types are available, can we just say? But I love that manifestation. Next time I'm going to channel my inner Georgia, and so I know for my next purchases. I think you've kind of touched on it a little bit, form versus function in your world, and it's really interesting as a designer. Yours is quite a technical background, but your passion is vintage watches aren't necessarily technical, or watches don't have to be technical for anybody to love them. So you've got the balance between the two, and then it's a machination, I suppose, and meets somewhere in the middle, and that strikes your ignites you. So from a vintage, I think it does strike a balance between form and function compared to modern pieces. But what are your thoughts on the balance, and which tends to attract you more, form or function?
So I think they're so close. I think function is kind of interesting because like function can be seen in so many different ways by people. Like function, yes, could be telling the time, looking at the date, looking at the day, cooking your eggs in the morning with your chronograph. Like there could be lots of function to it. I've heard people actually use their function.
Do you know anyone that does that? Because that's always the conversation. Or you can time your eggs.
I'm actually quite sassy about this. And I do it in like, I think I get away with it being an English person in America, that I'm like, do you even know how to use your chronograph? And a lot of people are like, no, I've never used it. And I'm like, I bet you time your eggs with it. And then a lot of people say that they actually do. And I feel like lucky that I can get away with being cheeky about it. But that only use I have when I hear about, because I actually don't own a chronograph in my collection, but the only use is like, okay, I time like 6 minutes to make some boiled eggs. I'm like, okay, that actually is great. So in terms of function, like fantastic. But I also think function can be like, I know it's more perhaps form, but function can be showing off your personal style. And I think as we're seeing like a lot of younger people, like late 20s, early 30s, almost coming into this like collecting hobby, we're seeing a lot of people pick pieces that are really showing off their personal style. And is that that's form, sure, but is that also function too, that you're using this to express yourself? So I think there's a mixture and a shift perhaps away from tooling. Like, do we really need chronographs? Like, do we need these high complication watches? Maybe not, but do we love how they look? And do we love what they say about us in terms of how we want to express ourselves? So I think there's such an interesting overlap between the two. And I think ultimately for me, it's like the form, because I love looking at like a piece holistically and sort of how that fits on my wrist and sort of what it says about me and that sort of emotional connection when I've got something on versus function. But I think there's a need for tooling watches too, but it's an interesting overlap.
Yeah, and I wonder if it also depends on the collector themselves, because some people it is really important that the functionality. I mean, I don't know how many people that wear a diver's watch actually go diving. time and time again over launches, it's the first of this, or it's the quickest
Yes.
of that, and the most elite version or the most advanced version of. So it's probably, I don't know, maybe a loaded question, but it's down to the collector itself, themselves, I suppose. And it's a real purist will feel really passionate about that element versus somebody that, like you said, I really like what you said, that the function of it doesn't necessarily mean about telling the time. It's how it makes them feel and what, like with it, where it's their outfit or what it says about them and how it displays their personality. Yeah, so that's quite an interesting one, because function doesn't necessarily just mean utilitarian, I suppose.
Yeah.
So emotional connections. Many watch enthusiasts talk about the emotional connection that they have with their own timepieces. For you especially, and with your love of vintage, what do you get from wearing a vintage piece? Like you personally, how do you feel?
I find vintage watches like so emotional and so sort of evocative. And for me, even when like selecting a watch that I need to buy or that I want to wear for that day, I feel like I have this visceral, like full body reaction when I find a watch that I just am in love with. Like yesterday, yeah, it was yesterday I had the chance to try on this incredible Rolex Midas with a coral dial. I think it's like 4314 from Eric Wynn. The way I felt wearing this watch was like so powerful, so beautiful, so amazing. This piece was just fantastic. I sadly had to give it back to him because I can't quite afford it. But it was the most incredible piece. And I feel like I had that strong emotional connection with that. Whereas I'll try on other pieces that perhaps don't resonate with me as much from a design standpoint. And it could be modern, it could be new. It's a full sort of runs the gamut. But I think collectors really have an emotional connection with their watches, and it could be because it's the function, like it could be because of this incredible complication that they've never seen that they need in their life, or it could just be the design or the way it feels on a wrist. But it's interesting how you picture a watch in your mind, you go in and eventually try it on, and like it might not actually live up to the expectations that you have in your head, but you'll try something else that like the AD might suggest, and then you have that reaction, that emotional reaction to it, and then you fall in love all over again. So it's interesting the connection that we have with these things, because they end up meaning a lot to us, and it's nice that we can sort of honor and respect.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, you've used the word visceral. Watch buying, when I was a watch buyer, was incredibly visceral. I was able to still understand the commerciality because I wasn't, unfortunately, just buying for myself. I was buying for a sort of an international retailer. But I'd sit in appointments and I wear my heart on my sleeve, and unfortunately, I don't have a poker face, so we'd be shown a watch, and at times I've gone, oh, and sort of my former boss, I'd get a nudge under the table, but equally I'd be waxing lyrical about something that I wouldn't expect to fall in love with, but I could identify something and I've had that reaction to watches before. And on the flip side, sounds really cheesy, but I've been very emotional when I've seen certain watches and it's like, that is incredible. And that's the visceral aspect that I love about this industry and about watches. So the aesthetics play a massive part in it. So it's, again, I suppose, goes back to that form and function, but it's the tactile element of how it makes you feel when you put it on, when you got it on your wrist, or looking at it on someone else's as well. It fascinates me time and time again how an object like that, one can connect with it or be so disconnected by. I suppose there's a lot. This is similar with cars and how people relate to their automobiles and things. But how important do you think storytelling as a marketing tool? So I think it's become a really powerful tool in the watch world. So if you think about icons, Paul Newman Daytona is the go-to as an example, and how that the legacy of that watch, it's come from that, the fact that Rolex couldn't sell these watches when they were launched, and it was just down to the fact that Paul Newman was given one by his partner, and they had one of those love stories where they met and they never spent a day apart from then on in, and she bought him this watch that had, they were giving them away, a lot of retailers at that stage, or with massive discounts, and now it's just. So for me, whilst a lot of watches have a lot of stories about them, it's the anchor one, or at least one that everybody is aware of. And I suppose there's quite a lot of myth around it as well, but it true to the story. Do you think how crucial do you think the narrative element is in appreciating a watch?
I think it's so important, and I think it's perhaps not done enough. I think the storytelling element is what really captures those emotions from the buyers. And I think it's what gets other buyers over to different brands too. Because I think a lot of buyers have an idea in their mind about Patek is something I'm going to pass down to my grandchildren, or Rolex is something that's iconic and going to be recognized, or whatever it might be. We have these sort of names in our head and these sort of perceptions. But then it's the other brands that do a good job of storytelling that really like pull us in. So like yesterday I went to a meeting with Roger Dubuis, I always pronounce it incorrectly, and I learned that he spent 15 years designing at Patek and 8 years designing at Longines, and started his own company at 57 and did that for the last 30 years of his life and made these incredible pieces, which entry level is 60K. Like I learned so much about these pieces and the level of detail that went into it. And I felt so lucky to have like the first-hand experience from the brand of them really teaching me about this story, which I had no idea about. But learning about that and learning about how this man had this vision and then built like this small but mighty empire, like that storytelling to me is magical and like that stuff that I love to hear. So I think brands can continue to do a better job, because especially I know I brought up sort of like the youth collecting, like what a lot of sort of Gen Z and like early millennials love is like the lore. Like tell me this lore, tell me this like story that gets me suckered in. And for brands to be able to target the younger audience by telling you these stories and telling you these details about the brands that perhaps aren't public or perhaps aren't common knowledge, that's what's really going to suck your audience in and get you into this new buyership that you perhaps haven't tapped into yet. So I really think brands could do more of it, because all these stories exist, but tell us, like, let me help you tell them. I think we want to hear more and more of that. I think it's not done enough yet, honestly.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the marketing piece on that and the storytelling, where potentially it's current associations and friends of the brands or ambassadors. I wonder if brands lean into that more as a commercial element versus sharing those stories and the history and the heritage and all of the. I think one of the reasons that some of these brands are so well established is because they have that legacy, and that's the bit that we're not communicated to properly. And having a new ambassador come in who might just be an incredible actor or a wonderful athlete, I'm not sure if it does a disservice to an extent, instead of, or at least incorporate the story and the origins. I potentially understand a slightly newer brand actually saying that, newer brands that have got their own stories as well, and I'm just as passionate about them, because for them to penetrate the market and actually be able to perform in it is what is kind of a watertight industry, because your first watch was a Rolex, and where people already have an idea of what they want as either their first piece or to start their collection or something within their collection, often means that some of the newer brands don't really have that opportunity. But I suppose brands like Roger Dubuis and H. Moser and Bremont as well, they're a very young brand. They're all sort of joining that story, or joining the platform, but not necessarily delivering their story as well as they could. Or they are, I don't know. I think sometimes there's a sort of a missed opportunity.
The celebrity element is also kind of interesting, because I think it's a very clever thing to like bring a celebrity on as an ambassador, because the celebrity comes with an almighty following already of probably not watch people. And like, sure, you want to get the watch people in, but you also want to bring in this whole other audience. So like having like Lewis Hamilton as the IWC ambassador is so incredible. And like the new rule that they brought in a while ago, where you actually can't wear a timepiece in a car whilst racing, and then you see him at the Met Gala wearing 3 watches as like a sort of a like, look at me, I'm going to do whatever I want still, which is just so amazing. I think he's so influential, he's such a fantastic influence too, and people are going to sort of want to echo that. So I think there's still an amazing space for celebrity ambassadors and for people like really championing and showing off the brand. But I think simultaneously to that, there's real people telling the story of the brand that is going to be sort of less aspirational and more like, this is part of me, this is attainable, this is something like I want to hear from a peer, and I want to understand about the brand from someone I trust versus someone I like want to be when I grow up.
I think that's it. It's always who are the audience and who are they trying to tap into, because some but I really want to buy into that celebrity endorsement. I had just off topic slightly. I had a message last night on Instagram from a friend of mine, and they have an actor friend, and they were like, "Oh, they want to be sponsored by a watch brand. Can you introduce them?" And I was like, "Well, firstly, no." And I said, "Just out of interest, which brands do you think that they would be interested in?" And obviously, they went in. Oh, I think they want to speak to Rolex. I was like, "Do they?" That's punching and ambitious. I was like, the best thing for them to do is have their PR team reach out directly. But it made me laugh, that the audacity of No, I mean, you've got to have ambition, I suppose. But I know who the actor is, and you also know that they're not on brand for the brand. You know, there would be such high. All of these brands will have so many people reaching out to them on so many occasions. But it just made me laugh, and I was just like,
Not that your friend is looking for advice. You know what I would do in that situation? I would reach out to like a vintage retailer, have the stylist reach out to someone like CPO program or some sort of vintage retailer that's separate to the brand, perhaps, and have them in like an amazing vintage Rolex from like the Keystone in LA or something like that. And then if the brand is like, oh, I love them in this piece, then maybe they'll come in that way. But I feel like put them in vintage and then see how that resonates with their audience.
yeah, well, that's testimony to you, your intelligence and your observation. Instead of somebody just going, I'm going to speak to my friend that does this because they might know someone there. I found it very lazy as an approach. So normally I'd shut the conversation down, but I was quite intrigued as to what brand they felt resonated with them. And it's not to say that it's not something that they can do. I think I would have almost felt more comfortable with the conversation if they'd thought about it a bit more, the same way that you had put some thought into your first watch. And I'm not suggesting he's thinking about it for 18 months because he clearly hasn't, because he's just gone off the cuff and gone for one of the Goliaths of the industry. But yeah, you heard it here first. Anybody that happens to be watching and who wants sponsorship, go to a vintage retailer first, speak to them. Georgia's giving you professional advice here as well as education. Thank you. We haven't actually talked about how you I mean, you talked about your first watch, but that as a collector, you clearly didn't stop there. So how did it then open up doors, and then what else is in your collection, and what do you have a favorite?
I definitely do have a favorite. So yeah, it's actually it's sort of interesting from that first sort of element of discovery. I think or not even I think I started very organically posting on Instagram about sort of what I was learning and things that I found interesting. Like clearly I'm very passionate about this and I find it all fascinating. So I was just sharing things that excite me. And like very much like I did with food and travels and whatever it might be. But I was organically sort of sharing my experience on Instagram. I joined a watch club when I was living in LA at the time, and I was the only girl in this whole watch club of like 150 watch collectors, and just sharing about the event, sharing about what I was going to, what I was trying on, and it kind of just took off very organically, which I'm so lucky for. And I think people could see my passion coming through, see it, that it was like a hobby that I was really sort of double downing. That's not really a word, but really like leaning into. And doubling down on thank you. My English this morning is not great, but I think that was a bit of a catalyst. I'm also I'm an avid crafter. This is relevant to the story, I promise. I made myself a Cartier crash out of paper mache that actually works. It has like an actual sort of motor on the back that does it. Like it's wild. And I remember I posted this on Instagram, and the head of Sotheby's in the US, Jeff Hess, someone sent it to him, and he DM'd me, and he's like, next time you're in New York, you have to come and say hello. Like I saw this crash, and I go in, and it's his first important watches sale, which was like 2.5 years ago, I think, at this point. And I walk in, and I'm like, and this little girl, I walk in, and I'm like, hi, I'm looking for Jeff Hess. And they were like, he's busy, he's got a sale in a day. And I, looking around, looking at watches, like being a bit shy because I've never actually been in an auction house environment before. And he walks in, and he was like, Georgia. And I am the happiest person ever. He is the nicest human. We have this whole wonderful chat. He's showing me pieces. He passes me over to other people to show me some of the collection. I get to try on a crash. Like all of this is the most wonderful experience. And I think sort of realizing how nice people are in this space and how welcoming they are. And all you have to do is just talk about your passion and show your genuine enthusiasm. And then the door's opened. And then you can just come in and celebrate with all these other fellow nerds. And it's so nice. So I think that was honestly such a big catalyst. And he knows the story, and I tell it to him frequently because I was like, I'm so grateful for this moment because you showed me that I could be part of this community. And it's a really lovely community to be a part of. So I think that is really where it kind of took off for me.
That's interesting. And I think listening to it, it's the authenticity that you have displayed. It was genuine for you, and it was a genuine interest. There's a lot of people living and based in pretty much central London, and I see quite a lot of people standing. And it's about watches and cars in the web where I where I observe this, and you can see people trying to be influencers, and good luck to them. I think everyone should express their creativity in a way that they can relate to the most. But I can almost tell immediately that they don't have a passion for it or a genuine interest. But your authenticity and your don't know the word dynamism. We're both,
Yeah.
the fact that you're so dynamic, I think, particularly the fact that you've just made this paper mache clock just out because for shits and giggles, I suppose. And again, it's exploded, and that's what people want to see because it's genuine, it's authentic. You're being quite true to yourself, and it's coming from this wonderful industry of which can be quite stuffy, which is another reason why I wanted to do sort of the women in watches, because to your point, only one girl at that watch in the watch club. Can you tell me a bit about that and how bravo, and for just having the balls, no pun intended, to to join them? How were you received? Did you enjoy it? I bet, or did you ever receive any, not negativity? Well, maybe it was negativity. Did they take you seriously is what I'm looking for, I suppose.
So there's so many layers to it. No, I wasn't taken seriously. Because I get very excited talking about this too. So, and even being it. So I'm an excitable, young appearing girl, and I turn to these faces, and they're like, "Well, who is she? Like, what is she's not that she was not welcome here, but like, no, we're not going to give her the time of day." But every time that I would speak about it or ask questions or show my genuine curiosity is when I started getting taken seriously. Similar to sort of your comment about influencers and sort of the genuine passion, I think because I wasn't ever trying to emulate or be anyone else or just mimic, I was just purely coming at it from a place of curiosity, and I still am coming at a place of pure curiosity. I think that is what comes across, and I'm so grateful that comes across because I find this so fascinating, and I want to be a sponge, and I just want to learn as much as possible. So I think because that's genuine and that's something that's just very real, it's been welcomed. But I think initially I come into these spaces, I'm grinning ear to ear, and everyone else is kind of a little more subdued. And because we are a nerdy, I'm a massive nerd, but we are a nerdy community. And I think I'm not the normal person to walk into a room and like start asking about movements, start asking about design history or whatever it might be. So I think the first few sort of meets I would go to, I would kind of have to prove myself amongst these collectors, which was fine. But then it got really welcomed because then people are like, oh, she knows what she's talking about. So I think it was kind of a sort of interesting overlap between the two. Even now, and it used to bother me quite a lot. I would like walk into an AD or I'd walk into like even beautiful stores in Burlington Arcade, and they wouldn't even speak to me. They would like, sure, buzz me in, but like they wouldn't even say hello or speak to me or be like, well, let me know if I can help you with anything. Mate, like so disingenuous. And then if I walk in wearing a big watch, that's when I get taken seriously. If I walk in wearing a vintage watch, they wouldn't even give me the time of day. So it's interesting how like having something impressive on my wrist gives me the validity. And I hate that, but sometimes I have to wear something impressive in order to just not have to do this dance to prove myself.
Well, it disappoints me, and I think everybody, Georgia Benjamin, should give you the time of day. And I love how you proved them wrong as well. And especially because it was really brave of you to step into that space in the knowledge that it wasn't even, there was a few women or it was 100% dominated male audience. You've probably, there will always, you'll be one of the few people that they remember from that group as well. They will not necessarily remember Bob that joined 2 years ago. There's nothing wrong with Bob that joined 2 years ago. We love Bob, yeah, or Barb in the States. But it's interesting. And do you think there is an opportunity for more women to get involved with these collectors clubs? And I think you host a few events yourself. Do you think there's an opportunity for women's only clubs, or is that quite negative as well? Because
Yes.
I love watches is it should be inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it to be about men's watches, women's watches, unless some pieces are going to be very particularly for very a Chanel cocktail watch is for a woman, and that's not a sexist comment, but all of my watches that I've ever worn have always been larger case sizes. So it doesn't matter that it was traditionally a man's watch. I've just always preferred a larger case size. But how do you think that these clubs specifically could and should, more importantly, engage with more female collectors and enthusiasts, because you don't have to be a collector, you just might want to get involved and start learning. And like you said, you go down that rabbit hole, and then you've welcome to this world of
Amazing
cogs,
collectors. Yeah.
wheels, chronographs, egg timers.
Egg timers, quite literally. Yeah, I think just simply removing gender from it is all we need to do. It's something that I've seen happening. It's something that some brands are doing, sort of by removing like men's watches, women's watches on their website, because you don't need. It's the only difference we're really talking about is case size. And like, you like wearing larger watches. Like a 36 was originally a man's watch, and now people are like, oh, it's too small for me. But you go back to the 50s, watches were like 32 to 36 millimeters, and that's were predominantly worn by men. Whereas now you're looking at like a Breitling and like a 44, or like a giant Panerai. And sure, there's a place for those too, because there are some larger wristed people that want to wear these almighty pieces. But I think purely just removing gender from when we're talking about watches in general is the way to do it. And you kind of look at it as, you see all the people who are in PR for watch brands, they're all women, and they're all, I'm generalizing, but like they're largely women, and they are largely wearing the pieces from the brand, which could vary in all sorts of sizes. Like my friend heads up brand for Ulysse Nardin, and she wears the most amazing Freak S, and it's a 40 millimeter. She's like 5'1", petite, and she looks so good in this watch. It really doesn't matter about like what gender the watch is intended for. And I think more and more people like myself, like other women in the space, like other people in the space generally, just less talking about it like toilet humor and making it really masculine and making it this boys club. I think sort of breaking down that barrier to entry to get just all people more into the collecting hobby is sort of where we're moving. And I definitely see more of it. And I just hope I can help others. I hope more people can really help others get into this space, because once you're in, it's so lovely and it's very fun to be part of this little nerdy club.
Yeah, it's as fun as it can be. I've been lucky to have some incredible experiences, but I think the brands have a responsibility, and they are shifting in that direction. Like you said, some don't have gender specific now, and they will do a collection. They won't have it genderized, and they'll do various colors of the rainbow. And Tag, I think probably 2 years ago, they relaunched the Carrera, and the strongest out of all of those was the fuchsia pink dial. And it wasn't necessarily women that were buying that color. That was what I was buying for the States at the time, so it could have been the demographic in the area as well that has a really big impact on sort of what's popular. So in Florida, for example, straps are not, because of the temperature and the heat, etc. So there tends to be bracelets. So all of these little nuances were quite interesting from a buying perspective. But I think the brands are now moving towards a more generic. It's just a watch buyer as a customer, not from a retail perspective, is a watch customer, and I think that's the beauty of it. And not to say you can't generalize, but there was a situation where I knew that a gentleman had bought a Gucci watch, and because he liked the watch, exactly the reason why he bought it. It was a great fashion piece. And then when he got home, he realized on the receipt it said ladies watch because of the details that come off. He then took it back because he didn't want to buy a woman's watch. The fact was, he bought the watch that he really liked in the first instance. So he was buying into the piece, buying into the brand, buying into the story and the aesthetics of it and how it made him feel, like we were talking about earlier. But the minute he found out that it was apparently a women's watch, he was absolutely not interested at all. And I found it quite fascinating, and I'm probably a bit disappointed with the whole thing, really. But that was on the client and not the brand at all, because
it is on the brand. I think it's human psychology, because he doesn't want to see us being like emasculine wearing this watch. And I get that he picked it because he loved it, and I love that. But the fact that the brand then told him, you're in a girl's piece, I think that's on the brand to change that verbiage. Like the watch probably had a style, or at least a skew. Just put that on put that on the listing instead. And I think if he doesn't want to wear something that's going to make him feel feminine because of the name of it, sure. But I do think it's on the brand to remove these titles. And sure, it's sad. That story actually kind of makes me kind of sad, because he picked this piece. It's a fashion piece. It's going to be like showing off his personal style, and he found something that he resonated with. And still, they're not super cheap. It's still fun for him to pick something that's more playful. But then the brand told him, you did pick a girl's watch, you know that. And then he didn't want to wear it. It makes me sad to hear that. Yeah.
The situation itself is the nuance of it. I don't think is. It upset me about him, because he'd made that decision despite the fact, first of all, he liked the piece.
Yeah.
brands are moving in the other direction. I mean, Zenith quite recently, all of their advertising, they've got women wearing the larger case sizes and vice versa, and the different dial colors, because that's the other element, is that the color can potentially have an influence over what is perceived to be masculine or feminine. But I think, again, as people are more comfortable expressing themselves in different ways, color being one of them, then we're stepping away from that. And brands are also becoming quite responsible in that it's not just a shrink it and pink it. If they wanted to make a woman's watch, they're not taking a bestseller larger case size, making it small and putting a pink dial in it and some diamonds. Some are still doing that, but hopefully we're moving away from that. What would your advice be to give a female collector who's just starting out, a young woman making waves in the watch community? What advice would you offer other women just beginning their journey into collecting, both vintage and contemporary or straight out of retail?
So I think one of the things I always recommend anyone is sort of buy what you like. So for someone in this sort of circumstance, I would recommend them to go in and try as much as possible to see what resonates, see what you have that visceral reaction to. So if you're in London, like, go to Burlington Arcade and be really upfront that, like, I am new in this space. I really want to understand what I like. Like, ultimately, we're all enthusiasts and we're all sort of, I keep on saying it, but we're all nerds in this space, and we love sort of teaching others about what we love and what we like to like pass on other people. So I think being able to walk into an AD, walk into an actual retailer, walk into Cartier and say, like, I've actually never tried a Pantheron before. I don't really know what size I want. Can I try them? And being upfront about it. I think where, especially Brits, but like where new people with less experience in this space, even myself, honestly, when we get intimidated going into these environments, it's because we're not being upfront about what we're there for. When people's like, can I help you with something? And you're like, oh, no, I'm just looking. The shop assistant is going to be a little annoyed because it's like, well, what's their intention? Can I help them do anything? Can I make a sale? Whereas like if you go in and you say, I'm probably not buying today, but I want to learn what I am going to buy in the future. And then you can build that relationship with the AD. And then you can also understand what you want. So try as much as possible, but be honest about why you're trying and ask the questions. So I think that's always my biggest advice. And like, don't be nervous about it. I think we want to share and impart knowledge on one another. And if you're honest, I think that's going to help get you really far in terms of really trying on what you want to try.
I think being honest about what it is you want, and more importantly to yourself as well, because you might have an idea of the type of watch you should buy because you think there's either a perceived value to it or a value that's you might retain from it, or it might be because it's something that your mum or your grandmother or your aunt has always worn. But that doesn't mean it's your style, and it's what you should continue with. Always ask me, what's the best watch to buy? And my response is always the one you love.
Yeah, that's fun.
There can't be another way to buy watches. Know your budget, know what it is that you want it for. If it's for special occasions only, I think it's a special occasion to wear a watch. It's not, I only wear a watch if I'm got a sort of an event.
You don't wear it every day?
No, I will always wear a watch. Okay. But what I mean is it's instead of waiting for a special occasion to wear the watch, it's a special occasion to wear my watches. So I'll enjoy them as much as I can, depending on the environment and the sort of it's got some challenges in the UK at the minute in terms of London with some bigger pieces. So what that has actually done is opened up a whole new world to me of slightly lower risk watches that I now enjoy, which I never thought I'd probably buy. But again, it's buying. I've done some research and there's a variety, and I really like wearing British owned brands as well. So I'll still wear my what you call a big watch when I feel sort of safe to do so on the right environment. But no, I went out the other night and I had a bangle on my left wrist. I was so uncomfortable because I didn't have a watch on it. It didn't matter which watch it was. With the outfit, I was
nothing. Yeah.
I chose a bracelet versus a watch, and it was a mistake. I felt naked. I did not feel dressed. I did not feel dressed. Okay, I want to know your top picks, please. Oh, by the way, firstly, what is your favorite watch in your own collection? And then I want your 3 top picks all time, because I know that's something that listeners would love to know about you, with your passion, your enthusiasm, which is palpable, by the way. And I absolutely love that.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, my favorite watch in my collection. If I, God forbid, had a fire, it would be the one watch that I would rescue. And it's my grandmother's Bouchereau from the 60s. It's 18 karat gold integrated bracelet with sort of a diamond shaped dial and like a bark finish and a bark dial. It's just so special. And my family aren't watch collectors. I don't come from my dad doesn't wear a watch, but my grandma had this one watch that even has English hallmarks on the bracelet. It's just so beautiful and reminds me of her so much. And every time I wear it, I get so many compliments on it and people asking because they've never seen a piece like it. And I honestly, I should be wearing it today because I should show you. I'll send you a picture anyway. But it is
Yeah,
just
please
such
do.
a beautiful piece, and it sort of has that familial tie. It's got a huge amount of design expression. It's got the history and the lineage, and it's also crazy to service. You have to take the crystal off in order to. It's got no case back to open, so it's also a complicated piece to even work on. And I love that it's got a challenge to it too. So there's just so many layers to this piece that get me really excited.
Amazing. And your top picks, please.
My top picks, my list is so long, it's unbelievable.
Well, I'm
So my
restricted
top,
to three because we have one.
okay, I'll be quick about it. The first one, okay, there's a Cartier, it's a Cartier, AP, and a Rolex is on this list. The first one it's kind of basic, but it's something I just need. It's a vintage mini yellow gold Panthère with a diamond set case and bezel. So they make some of them just with a bezel, but I want the two layers of diamonds and obviously the diamond cabochon. And it's something like I wear my watch on my technically wrong wrist because I don't wear bracelets on this wrist, but I wear bracelets on this wrist always. So I would have it on this wrist amongst my bracelets stacked, and I would wear it like a bracelet versus a watch. So this is on my list. I'm hoping to go to Japan and find one that's vintage and very special. The second one is it's a modern piece. It's the Carolina Bucci Royal Oak from Audemars Piguet in a 34 back ceramic with the holographic dial. If they only made 350 of them, you can buy them for double the price on the grey market now. To me, I think this watch is like a watch version of me as a person, because like until you get me engaged, I'll probably be quite quiet and I'll probably have a little bit of a bitchy resting face and I'll probably just be a little standoffish like a Royal Oak might be. But as soon as you get me talking, I sparkle, and this dial is so sparkly and holographic and wild. So I feel like it's me in a watch. And I've told AP this because I throw dinners with them sometimes, especially for like female collectors. And I keep on like plugging, being like, maybe I can just get one, but we'll watch.
If there's only 350 made, you only want one of them. I mean, we're not being greedy, so
I'm not asking for too much. It's really not. But it's
I
amazing.
love
I
that
think
you identified that watch as if a watch was represented you as a person, that's the one. Oh,
100%. It's me
great.
because unless you start me talking, I'm just a little subtle black like watch that you wouldn't even notice. And then suddenly it's like, yeah, get me talking. It's like giving me a coffee. Let me talk about watches. I'm gonna just like light up. So okay. And then the last one is it's similar to the Midas that I tried on yesterday, but I think it's a 4325 or something. The reference code I don't remember exactly, but it's a Rolex Midas it's got a hexagonal dial to it, so it's very symmetrical. It's all gold integrated bracelet, and it's got Roman numerals on the bezel. And I was lucky enough to borrow one from a brand for quite a while, and it just became part of me. It's got a mirror dial to it. It's all gold. It's like a chunky bracelet, and it's just such a beautiful piece. And I love that whole collection when it came out, and slight variations of them too. And the fact that this one is perfectly symmetrical too, because a lot of them have a sort of an asymmetry to them, which too is very nice. But I love this perfect symmetrical one. So those are my top three.
Oh gosh, so they're glorious watches. And like you've gone vintage as well and something contemporary. So you started out quite recently, but you've massively immersed yourself in the watch world. That's the beginning of your story. We're on the infancy, and sort of I feel like you're only just starting. You're becoming a massive influence in the watch world as well. What's next for you? What is it you want to do with your passion?
Oh, so that's a very good question, and thank you for your very kind words. I did an amazing speaking opportunity yesterday with Eric Wind and Reginald Brack, who are two incredible people in the watch world, and we were talking at an insurance conference about sort of navigating the watch world and navigating sort of them as investment pieces or collector's pieces, whatever it might be. And I love speaking opportunities. I find them so fun. I love going to these sort of different environments and talking to different people about collecting and what that sort of entails. So I really love talking about it from like an advisory capacity too. And it's something that I do very much as like a hobby on the side, as advising a lot of people about their collections, getting into it, sort of what to buy, connecting them with the right people. So I think really sort of leaning into that space. But I think ultimately what I want to do is sort of lower the barrier to entry into collecting. And I want more and more people to see the magic of this space. So how that's going to manifest, I think it's just going to unfold for me. But I think just doing more of this, chatting to more wonderful people like you, just being able to connect with more people in this space and outside of it to bring people in is just what I'm hoping to do more of. So I think sort of watch out, because I feel like there's going to be so much that's happening and I'm so excited about it.
Watch out, and we've also watched this space, because I've got a funny feeling we'll be seeing a lot more of you. Georgia, thank you. I can't thank you enough for your time today. It's been delightful to talk with you. Go and have another coffee, and hopefully we'll have another opportunity to speak again soon. Let me know when you're in the UK, and I'm going to let you know when I'm stateside, because I want to do this face to face, and we don't need the cameras. We could just talk for hours over what is clearly a passion for both of us. Thank you so much again for joining me today. You've been a delight to meet. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.